We're now I'm going to ask our panelists to give us one, or in the case of Seth, because he's got an allowance because he's a little bit older, so he gets to have 2 comments, and then we'll open it up for a few questions from the audience. We're trying to keep to our post-time schedule here. So Ms. Schroeder, give us something we can do, something within our grasp. There's a lot of things we can't do. There are things that we can do. Give us one thing that you think would get out the folks in your age group.
I think it's the personal connection that you can make. If I bring someone to the track and I say, oh, here's my horse that's racing, they have someone to root for. If they have Admiral's Express that they can watch for 6 years and they know the horse, or they go and meet John Campbell. And then
utilization of people that are in our sport as ambassadors,
yes,
for those who are not.
Yes.
Okay. John?
Promotion of the sport. Even if it's not in person, we have to utilize the internet, we have to utilize television, we have to utilize the radio. We have to make everything available. You have, in thoroughbred racing on ESPN on the weekends in the summer, the Road to the Breeders' Cup. Seeing all the top races from Saratoga this week. In 2 weeks is the Arlington Million. We know what's going on in thoroughbred racing. We have to expose harness racing to a larger group, see what we can do about the review. Like Pennsylvania Harness has a weekly edition on YouTube. Get that onto ESPN, ESPN2, Fox Sports Net, something, broaden the market so we can get harness racing out there in the mainstream. And also bring the message to the handicapping fans. Look, I enjoy betting turf races too in the thoroughbreds. Turf race handicapping and harness racing handicapping are very similar. So emphasize that. If you bet thoroughbred, it's not a hard transition to go from thoroughbred to harness and vice versa. Speak for the entire sport, not just for harness racing.
Thank you. Roberto?
Many people think that 1825 are not coming because we're not influencing 1825. When you go to Hambletonian, you have padded park, you have the kids slides, those are for little kids. And our impression is, oh, gambling's for older people, people go to horse track. So we might have a college night or something where, as Jessica said, where we could do drawings. Rutgers comes and they could draw a horse or something, and that's their horse for the night. And then Rutgers kids will come and, oh, that's our mascot. This is a race that we're gonna bet on. This is the horse, and then you get people betting on that. And we could also have dollar beers that night, which you don't even have to give them the bottle. You can give them like a plastic cup. Just be like, oh, here, this is your dollar beer. We didn't say you're gonna get a bottle. Here's your little plastic cup of a dollar beer. And then that's how you influence and just get them to the track, and they'll come and then enjoy the competition and love the horses.
Stephanie?
I kind of have 2 things. I just want to follow up on what John was saying about the horses and having short shelf lives and not really identifying with a horse. I think it's more important to focus on the driver. I think that harness racing needs like a Derek Jeter or a Chase Utley of the sport. And I just bought a sports almanac the other day, and there was like an ESPN sports almanac the other day, and there was a 2-page spread on Brian Sears. And I think it's more important to focus on right now the drivers, because they're around forever and ever and ever. And someone like Brian Sears, who's the leading driver right now, I think it's more important to focus on him. And then the other thing I was going to say is I think it's important to also update your harness tracks. I mean, I know that costs money, obviously, but the racetrack right now is, the Meadowlands is kind of looking stuck in 1975. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't go, because that brings in an older clientele right now, and it's kind of like a vicious cycle. You have, an older clientele, and one of the reasons why the 21-year-olds don't really want to go is because there are, so many old people, and, there isn't really anything to attract them to the track. There's no Starbucks or, there's no little shopping area, and it's, like I said, I mean, it was modern for 1975, but if you want to go contemporary, you have to update every decade. So.
Okay, and Seth?
That's very interesting. Just quickly, as Stephanie said, I've thought about that. I wasn't planning on saying anything now, but I think that there's sort of 2 ways that you appeal to people, and one is to be modern and glitzy and neon, and the other, which harness racing may have a better shot at, is being traditional. And when I think of the best of harness racing, I think of the historic track at Goshen, I think of the Red Mile and DuQuoin and Delaware, Ohio. And that may be a better showcase for harness racing than the Meadowlands.
The Americana
honestly.
aspect?
Yes, exactly. But quickly, and that leads to my next point, which is also similar to what you said, trying to be a young person for this panel, which is, square
harder and
peg,
harder.
round hole, whatever. But I looked up what was the most popular YouTube clip for harness racing, and it turns out it features fillies, trotters, and a small field, things which we don't associate with big popularity or broad popularity. And it's the Passionate Clyde and Pierce Waves Bye Bye. And it was a surprise to me that that's what it was of all the big races that we've had, but it makes sense. People respond to drivers showing personality and to the competitive nature of that drivers show. And for those of us in the sport, I think we know how competitive drivers are, how bitter the rivalries are, how dangerous the sport is, and how angry they get at each other. And unfortunately, I think we've squashed all that, and we've tried to eliminate all that controversy. And when you look at sports like NASCAR, you see the drivers' personalities, the rivalries, the things that they say about each other, throwing their helmets. I mean, we've had incidents, in Canada, there was a major fight between two drivers. It led to major suspensions. And unfortunately, I mean, if that was videotape on that, it would be on SportsCenter and would have made the highlights of 2006. I mean, but we put all that under the rug, but that's really exciting stuff, and I think that's a shame. And the last thing I'd say, this is my second point, is I've gotten a little exposure to some friends who are in the hunter-jumper world, and kids who ride hunter-jumpers. And the one thing that shocked me about it was the trophies that they win, which they race mostly for ribbons and trophies. And the trophies they win for 6-year-old kids that go with a ribbon are nicer than some of the trophies that we get for $300,000 races. And I've had trophies that people have looked at in my house that were for fairly races that meant a lot to me emotionally and financially, and they look like harness racing versions of bowling trophies. And I think that is a big mistake, and I think especially with all the money that we've got to spend, in purses, you could take a small fraction of that purse money and make a nicer trophy, and maybe if you have 2 owners, you can make 2 trophies. That's important to so many people getting into the sport, and I think we're making a big mistake in not doing that better.